The Hopkinsville Police Department. My name's Seth Meek. I'm in charge of investigations. Kind of brief background about who I am. I've been in law enforcement for 12 and a half years. I've done everything in the police department, from narcotics to patrol to gangs to SWAT teams to kicking in doors, to being in charge of investigations now, from everything from homicides to dealing with regular thefts when somebody steals something from your car or from your house or whatever. I have detectives that do that. They also do computer crimes. I'm in charge of the evidence room. I have guys that take care of that. But probably the most important thing to me is dealing with homicides and victims of shootings and other cases. That's the most important thing to me, because that's the customer service that we bring to the community, to be able to bring closure to people's families and try to give answers. All right. So that's kind of me. I grew up in the military household. I moved around my entire life. I'm not from Hopkinsville. I've just been here the last 12 and a half years. As you can see, what the phone's going off. Pretty much lived everywhere. Longest place I was anywhere was 3 years. I went to 4 high schools in 4 different years. So I didn't get to experience a lot of the things that people who stay in one place get to do. I had constantly had to move around, meet new people, take on different situations. I went from Texas to Georgia, from Georgia to Baltimore, and from Baltimore to South Dakota. So I made a big horseshoe shape around the country and went from...
Where at Baltimore?
I lived in Severn, Maryland, right outside. Really? I went to Old Mill High School, man. So, what we're going to talk about today is communication styles, and probably the most effective thing. That's something that I think I'd like to think that I have a grasp on it, but there's also always learning points with anybody, and that's the most important thing when you are talking with people. You have leadership, you have friendships. Everybody in here has certain expectations and certain communication styles. You display things both verbally and non-verbally. A lot of your non-verbal cues are your body language. Your displeasure, you show displeasure through non-verbal, by facial expressions, your body language if you're not interested in something, by paying attention, not paying attention. Those are all non-verbal cues. That is a communication style in and of itself. But more importantly, how you interact with somebody, how you talk, the words that you choose to use with somebody, the directness that you use to take versus non-directness. So those kind of things. But I want to kind of ask you guys, I don't know what all you guys do or what you guys are planning on doing. So just kind of go around and just what grade you guys are in and what your plans are.
Senior.
You don't know what you're going to do after high school? You can go to college or go to work? All right. Any type of work? Farming? All right.
I'm a junior. I have a factory job.
Factory job? All right. Any particular skill? All right.
I'm a sophomore. Going to the Air Force.
Air Force? What do you want to do in the Air Force?
Yeah,
Crew member? All right.
I'm a senior.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to UPS.
UPS? It's a pretty good job.
I'm a junior and I want to be a welder.
All right. I'm sorry, do what? Junior, you don't know yet? Got any ideas? I'd probably say when I was a junior, sophomore, I was in high school, I didn't think about the long-term effects of things because I didn't feel like it ever would get there. You don't really plan on certain things in life when you're this young, looking forward. But the most important thing that I could probably tell you that you need to pay attention to is when you have a plan and you start getting into the workforce is communication skills. Everything you do is communication. When you walk in to get an interview, how you present yourself, how you talk in the interview, how you communicate with coworkers, how you communicate with your boss, your manager, your leader, how you communicate with your family. All that stuff is communication, and it's probably the most important thing that you can do. You can't assume that somebody knows what you mean when you're talking. You got to make sure that people understand that. So communication, to be effective with that, you got to make sure everybody's on the same page. A lot of times in leadership positions, or when you are giving somebody directions or instructions on how to do stuff, people have a tendency to assume that you know what I mean. If I tell you to go pick up something and move it over here, I'm assuming that you know how to pick it up. I'm assuming you know how to carry it to the location. I'm assuming you know how I want it when I put it there. I'm giving you a very generalized statement. Hey, go pick this up, move it over there. I'm leaving a lot for you to guess. So then when it's not done the way that I want it done, what's the natural instinct?
It's your fault.
Get mad, you get frustrated because they're not doing it how you envisioned in your mind, but you didn't communicate that. So communication skills are the utmost important thing when you talk to people. You have the power, when you have communication with people, to crush their motivation and their spirit to want to do right. I'm going to say that again. You have the power to crush their motivation and their spirit to want to do right. If I'm constantly being negative and nothing is ever good enough and everything you do for me, I'm picking at and demoralizing your spirit and your work ethic, are you going to want to produce for me? Are you going to want to work hard for me? The answer is no. You're not going to want to. You're going to get disgruntled. You're going to say, screw it. If nothing's ever good enough, I'll just be mediocre like so-and-so. I'll do the bare minimum. I'm going to get paid either way, which causes what? You're not having fun with your job. And that's really what it's about. You want to come to work every day. You want to have fun and feel like you're a part of something bigger than yourself, that you're doing something that is meaningful, even if it's welding. Welding is a very important job. It is the infrastructure for buildings, for cars, for everything else. If you don't take pride in your job and you're disgruntled because you have ineffective communication skills with your employer, your quality of work goes down, does it not? What if you start cutting corners because you're disgruntled? Somebody's life could be on the line because you didn't do a weld properly. So it's bigger than just you. So it's very important, like, when you guys are talking, when you guys get in leadership positions and when you're taking these jobs, that you understand how your communication affects people. You have the power to build people up with your words. You know, when you're talking with your friends, you talk a certain way with your friends. You talk differently with your teachers. It'll be the same when you go in the workforce. You're going to cut up with your friends, and you can say certain things with your friends that you can't say with your fellow co-workers or your boss or your leader. Yeah, I just shut it off because I was talking.
Yeah, we got to move a little bit.
All right, we're good. We're rolling with it. So, I want to kind of ask you guys, I'm a very informal person. I'm not going to stand up here and preach to you all day. So, I'm going to kind of ask you guys, what skills do you think in communication are important? What do you think is something that is important to not only you, but to other people in the class that they think they should know? Not everybody at once. So we'll start with you then. So you're gonna go into farming, right? You gonna work for somebody, or you gonna have all your land already?
Somebody.
Okay. So what's something that you think is important that your boss, how he talks to you? Because you're gonna work for somebody, right?
Somebody mixing some chemicals or something. If you didn't tell me the correct way, I can mess up the whole deal.
Yeah, which costs a lot of money, right? And I doubt insurance covers the chemical part of it, right? It's only like natural disasters and stuff like that. So it'd pretty much on you. Right? So you want to make sure that he is clear with what he's telling you, especially if you've never done it before, right? What about if he tells you, how is his interaction? How should he interact with you when he wants things done? Should he come in and be like, this is what I want done, A, B, C, and D?
Yeah, just explain how he wants it done.
Okay. So he should be clear with what he wants. Be clear with his communication.
Yeah.
Be effective with what it.
Communication side of it.
So let me ask you this. As somebody who works for somebody else, and the leader comes in and says that, what do you think is important about communication for you back to him?
Let him know that I understand.
Making sure you ask questions, not be afraid to ask questions, right? Like when we're sitting in here today and we're throwing things out there. Because if you don't understand something, how am I supposed to know if you don't understand it? If you don't ask me a question, right? What about you? Because you don't know what you're doing, right? You haven't decided yet? You got any ideas? Not really? And you got any passions? Being outside. All right, so preferably you would want something that deals with being outside. All right. So like a firefighter? Military? All right. So do you think you're going to have to do things in your job that you're not going to want to do? Give me an example. Give me something that you think is that you got to do in your job that you don't want to do. Kind of like today, right? Yeah. So you're not very comfortable with getting up and talking to people that you don't know? Okay. So if your boss is asking you to go do that, you do what? You have to make a way for you to go do it. What are the kind of things that you're going to tell yourself to get you prepared for that? Overcome your fears. It's very good. Do you know what the definition of courage is?
Get scared, but still do it anyway.
Fears either control you and stop you from doing things, or you recognize it and you do it anyways. That's what courage is. There's a lot of situations in life that you're going to be scared to go do things. There's a lot of things that you have to overcome. Worrying about people are going to make fun of you because you don't know who they are, and that you're standing up here talking to a bunch of strangers that don't know who you are, which is a natural fear. I used to hate doing it until I found something that I was passionate about, which I'd go do presentations on what I had knowledge on. Just being a cop, dealing with gangs, dealing with drugs, dealing with guns, stuff like that. That's important. So, what about you? You gotta know.
Help me out here.
I've asked the same questions. I'm just asking you.
like you said, when somebody tells you to do something, they need to be clear and tell you everything that they've done.
Okay. Do you, everybody's different in this aspect. So when you're talking about communication, do you think it's important that are you somebody who likes to learn by just going out and doing it, or do you want to know every step of the way and they take the mystery out of learning something on your own?
Depends on how hard it is.
Right. So do you, as a leader, what's another communication is, do you want them to walk you through it and show you hands-on, or do you want somebody to tell you something? How do you learn?
Hands-on.
So you learn hands-on. So that's a communication style, right? That's a learning style for you. But as a leader, as somebody who is going to teach you something as an employer, I've got to understand that's how you learn. You may not learn like that, right? I could probably give you a book. You read it one time and you're like, okay, I got it. I'm a hands-on learner. I like to fiddle around and figure it out. So as a leader, I have to understand that that's your learning style. So I have to tailor that as a leader to you. But I have to understand that about you. So all that stuff is factored in that you have to pay attention to. So when somebody's showing you something, how do you want them to communicate with you when they're showing?
I want them to show me that everything has to be done and don't leave anything out.
Okay. So when they're communicating that to you, do you want it in a passive sense as I'm a friend, or do you want it as I'm going to tell you this is how it's going to be done, don't deviate from this, you don't have a judgment in it?
Like, yeah.
You like it like, you want somebody to talk to you like that?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you?
When you work at UPS, they strictly go over like the diamonds on the boxes. They got specific diamonds on there,
Mm-hmm.
and they teach, and there's symbols on how dangerous the box can be, like the chemicals in it. And they teach you the rules of the yards, and they strictly go over all the rules. You gotta know how to pick up the box and all that stuff.
All right. So they teach you all that stuff, right?
They give you a list and it's step by step on how to do all of it.
All right. So what happens when it's not in a instruction manual or they haven't taught you that? How?
You gotta ask them, but you gotta ask them about it.
So you got to ask questions, right?
Yeah.
All right. Is there time to ask those questions?
When the problem comes up, if it's like if you're not comfortable doing it, you gotta stop what you're doing and ask them.
So you got to stop what you're doing and ask. You don't assume or anything like that.
Because they said you don't know how dangerous something box to be or something like that.
Right.
Even if it's a little late, still.
You can talk to one of your UPS buddies. I ordered a glass box and it was broken the other day.
Hey, when they get on them trucks and they're throwing them boxes, they don't care what's in the box. They just throw them.
They don't care.
All right. How about you?
They broke the cylinder.
I like to learn hands-on.
Hands-on? So you're going to go into the Air Force. All right. You like taking orders from people?
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of that in the military. Right? Kind of what they're going to tell you when you got to be up, when you got a PT, even if you don't want a PT. And you're going to be working for people who are going to tell you what to do, how to do it. Right? And their communication style is probably going to be a little bit different than how you were raised, right? Especially when you go to training. There's going to be a lot of yelling, a lot of not thinking. They're just going to tell you where to be, how to stand, how to fold your bed, how to make your bed. How are you going to deal with that? Well, it's easy to say that at the beginning. It's a little different when somebody's in your face yelling at you, because you're going to have a bunch of emotions and frustrations that are like in the back of your mind. You're going to be like, man, I just want to punch this dude, right? You think that's natural?
It is natural.
Because they're not going to talk to you like your mom does, right? Not going to talk to you like your dad does, right? Not going to talk to you like your teacher. So how do you deal with that change in communication? That it's a culture shock, right? So how do you develop yourself? How do you think about that stuff now to prepare yourself for the future?
Just go on.
Just get on with it. All right, that's a good way to look at it. What about you?
What up, boy, man?
Do what? So what did y'all, I want to ask y'all a question. What did y'all see whenever one of y'all are going around talking? What did y'all notice about each other?
Use communication skills.
Yeah, you use communication skills. But what did it say about each of you? Some of you talk very low, some of you talk very loud, some of you were assertive with what you were saying, some of you were kind of passive, you didn't really have a grasp of what you wanted to say, you were just saying things. And you can tell by the way people are communicating, both their verbal and nonverbal cues, aggressive, passive, your level of confidence that you have in what you're talking about. So if I'm coming to you as an employer, as a boss, as a customer, and I ask you a question, and you're not assertive, and you don't have a grasp of what you're trying to sell me, what you're trying to talk to me about, how much trust and faith am I going to put into you that you know what you're doing?
You don't know what you're talking about. You just act, try to act like you don't know about it. You probably wouldn't know about a problem.
It's true. Do what?
Right.
Pretty much. So there's a difference between being assertive and being overly confident and talking about something that you don't know about, or projecting a false confidence, which that is also a communication. This overconfidence is when you really don't know what you're talking about, but you're trying to act like you do. So you're trying to be confident and assertive, which people do that. When they're nervous, they cut jokes and they laugh at each other because they really don't know how to act or talk about certain things. That's an overconfidence.
Like our old little teacher.
I don't know. I've never met the man, so I don't know. But that is. If you don't know what you're talking about, people people project and talk like they do know what they're talking about. And you can see through that, right? It's the same way with being passive and not being confident and not have the knowledge of what you're talking about too. You see that when people talk. He's very knowledgeable on UPS, you can tell. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to that. So if he's selling me on the company, he's going to tell me all these great things, and he's very confident in it, and he believes in it. So I trust his belief because he's knowledgeable. He shows that in his dialogue. He shows that with being confident when he has communication. He makes eye contact. He's assertive, but he's not overbearing. He's not forcing the information to me, but he's open for my questions. And he relays it in a way that I can understand it. So all those are communication things. All those are communication styles and things that you have to understand when you're talking to people. In any job that you do. Whether you're selling something to somebody, whether you're leading people, whether you work for somebody else, whether you run your own business. That may be part of it someday for you. But all those things factor into everything that you're doing. So it's important to understand all that. Now they have like this, I don't know, 96 slide presentation. But my job is to talk to people. I go in an interview room with people, and that's all I do. I deal with people who have done very bad things to people who've done very little things. So when you're communicating with somebody, you have to understand those nonverbal cues that people are giving off. To me, It's easy to sell somebody something. How do you get somebody to admit to wrong when they know that they're going to have to own that wrong? It's communication. You've got to be able to talk to people. You've got to be able to know what their body is saying, what their verbal words are saying. It's the same way when you're talking to people at work. People always do what they're comfortable with. So you have to understand the people that work for you or the people that work with you. People will always do what they're comfortable with and what you hold them to. If I let you constantly come into work late, what's going to happen? You're going to take advantage of that, right? It'll be okay. You don't care if I'm 5 minutes late. 5 minutes turns into 10 minutes, 10 minutes turns into 30 minutes. But if all you guys are working for me, and I don't address that with one of you that's doing that, what's the rest of you going to do?
Somebody's going to tell somebody, and then they're going to do it too.
So if he's constantly late and all of you work together, and then you're late one day and I come talk to you about being late, how's that going to make you feel?
Favoritism.
Favoritism. All right. How else? So what did I communicate to you by addressing you for being late?
Made it seem like you don't like me.
Okay. So is that going to affect your interactions with me?
Yeah.
How you perceive when I come to talk to you about something else if you're not doing something to the standard or to my expectations? Is that going to affect how you communicate with me? You think you're going to block out probably 90% of everything that I say? Probably. So, as a leader, is it not important that when I communicate with people that I do it the same for everybody else by holding everybody to a standard and expectation? Is that easier to follow? So when I come to you and I say, hey, listen, I understand that things happen, you got to call me and let me know, but you can't be late. I need to know where my people are because we have things that we have to accomplish for the day. If I do that across the board for everybody when they're late and I hold everybody to the same standard, do you think it's easier when I come talk to you about something that you really did wrong or something that I really need you to do to understand the importance of it? Do you think you're going to buy into that more? You're going to be more receptive to listening to what I have to say? Yeah, it's human nature. And everybody does it. But you got to understand that communication levels as a leader, as a team leader of a bigger picture, as somebody who works together with somebody else. If you guys are working together and you guys are constantly joking around and there's one person in the group that you don't ever joke with and you don't include them in on anything, do you think they're going to feel a part of the team? We all do it. It's human nature.
They're probably going to think you're joking about them.
Yeah. Do you think that person is going to help you succeed if you have a project that you have to get done? No. So all those are types of communications that you display that you really got to think about when you're out there and you're working in the whatever career that you choose. Everything that you do is communication. Whether it's with each other in a controlled setting, as in welding in here, how you interact with your teacher, how you interact with your teammates, how you interact with the other students in the classrooms, how you interact with other teachers. How many of you guys had a problem with another teacher? Somebody told you they have a problem with another teacher and they told you all the wrong that teacher did to them. You never met the teacher, but now you have that teacher next year. How many of you have already worked up in your mind what this person's like? Same way in the workplace. You've never worked with somebody, you never had a boss, and you hear somebody else talk about this person, and tell you all the horrible things that they did or what they did wrong and how they're not a good leader or how they're not a good teammate, and you've never worked with them, and what did you do?
Respect even worse.
You came in with the preconceived idea of who this person was, right? You formulated your opinion in your mind without ever giving this person a chance based on somebody else's idea of what they thought was wrong, or what they thought they could do better, or what they thought they were weak in. How many of y'all do that with teachers? Do you give them a chance? Do you come in with an open mind and open ears to actually hear what somebody's saying, or you listen and then you're going to have her just respond because you already know where it's going? Y'all do that, right? You can be honest. He's not going to beat y'all up.
When I first met him, I thought he was cool.
All right. Are you trying to get extra points?
No, I'm serious.
I'm saying anybody.
He's young. He's like us. That's what makes me like him so much.
All right. So, what if you never had him as a teacher and he had him the previous year, and you guys are at school and he's like, man, this dude thinks he's one of us, thinks he's young, he tries to use all the hip words, all the words that are cool, he dresses like he thinks he's cool. He's just a blah, blah, blah.
Only thing is, he drives it forward.
You wouldn't have a preconceived notion about him based off somebody else? Well, I know that's not true. And that's just life. Everybody does that. You base your opinions off what other people say before you ever meet them. You've got to understand that. Because you will shut out 90% of what they're trying to tell you because you have already said you don't know what you're talking about because it's what somebody else told you. And that's the reality of it. How many times you walk in when you know you're wrong, you walk in and that teacher sits you down, but because you don't have respect for that person or you don't believe in what they're saying, you couldn't say 90% of that conversation that happened in that room. I did it growing up. Everybody does it. If you're not listening to somebody, you're already tuning them out before you go in there. It's the same way with the workplace. And it has adverse effects in the workplace. It's not like school. If you don't perform, if you don't communicate, if you're not effective with your communication, if you don't ask questions, they don't keep you around. They let you go. And everybody, when you get in the workplace, you'll have an evaluation. Some of them are quarterly, some of them are every 6 months, some of them are yearly. But all of you will have evaluations. And one of the most important things on those evaluations is communication. Do you communicate clearly, effectively, both in writing and verbal? And do you accomplish what you're setting out to do? Are you effective in doing that? Some of the most important things. When we go into court, we walk in front of 12 people who don't know us. We're asking 12 people to listen to what we're saying, believe what we're saying, and affect somebody's life. You have to be able to communicate clearly with what you're saying and paint a picture with your words and create a presentation. It's what our job is. If I need something done, whether I'm a firefighter, a police officer, I'm in the military, I'm a welder, I'm a UPS, or whatever, I have to make sure that my communication is effective, both verbal and nonverbal cues. I have to be clear with what I'm asking. I have to be clear with the directions that I'm giving. And I have to make sure that you guys understand, do you have questions? Yes or no? And you can't be afraid to ask questions. You can't be afraid to look stupid. And that's what it is. That's the natural human instinct. If I ask this question, they're going to think I'm stupid. And I don't know what I'm doing. So it takes you an hour to accomplish this mission and you did it wrong. Now you got to go back and do it another hour, right? So rather than do it right the first time by asking me a 10-second question, you could have saved yourself another hour. You could have saved me another hour. You could have saved all of us another hour where we could be focusing on something else. Or maybe going home early because we got all of our stuff done that we needed to get done. Right? How many welds do y'all do in here? Like, y'all weld every day or?
Just about.
Just about? So what's the importance of a weld?
Not to break.
Not to break?
Good penetration.
All right. So what happens if you don't do it to the standard that you need for that weld to hold?
Don't break, you'll get in trouble.
It's going to break. Well, you're kind of in a safe environment, right? I mean, you're not making decisions that are going to affect a building coming down today, right? But you're preparing for the future, right? And this is where you're learning. So you have to ask a lot of questions. Yes, no?
Yeah.
Yeah?
You want it to look good too.
You want it to look good?
Each run is different. Yeah. Know how to use every one.
Right? So
All different techniques.
So if I never welded before and I walk in this class and I ask you to teach me how to weld, what's the first thing that you're going to tell me to do?
Turn the machine on.
Turn the machine on. Is there any safety precautions that I need to maybe have before I turn the machine on?
Safety
Get
glasses.
your safety glasses, jacket, make sure you got on pants, some leather shoes or boots.
Does it matter what kind of pants I wear?
Not those.
I can't wear these? Is that a safety violation?
It'll burn right through.
Burn right through? All right.
So like blue jeans. Get a helmet, gloves, everything you need not to get burned.
All right. So the first thing you wanted to tell me to do was turn the machine on, but we didn't even do the steps before it, right? So do you think that you communicated very clearly with what I needed to do to be safe?
No.
You just assumed, right? You assumed that I probably knew that I just needed to learn how to turn the machine on because safety is pretty common sense, right? So you can't assume in anything, no matter how redundant it is, until I prove that I know what I'm doing with the safety things consistently as a person. You have to pay attention to that. You have to make sure you tell me that. Not that you're belittling me, not that you're saying that I'm stupid, but you got to make sure that I'm doing right, and my actions by me constantly doing that and consistently doing that show that I grasp that concept, right? Which now you can focus on the next thing and make sure I'm doing the next thing correct. Or you don't have to look after me. So you have to understand that you have to communicate with that with people and understand the importance of it. You jump me straight into turning the machine on, right? But there's a lot of things that go into it that you can't assume. It's the same way with anything else. And you guys go do stuff later on. When you're explaining and teaching, instructing, because at some point you guys will be instructing somebody in your life. At some point you will be teaching somebody something in life, in your job that you do, or anything else.
Top people must know.
Now, imagine that if this is your business and you're teaching all these new guys how to weld, and this is your business in here, and this is your product, and this is what you're selling, your livelihood that you provide for your family, and the money, and you have all these workers that work for you. You think communication is very important?
Yes.
Do you think it's important not to assume that somebody understands something or knows something? I'd say so. You know how hard it is to be somebody who's younger and you've got to teach somebody who has more experience than you the way you need it done? When I first took over in a position, I had senior guys, we call them senior guys that have more experience than I do. But I'm in charge of them. I'm leading them. And that's the natural thing that they will tell you. I've got the experience, to sit back, let me do my thing. But as a leader, you have to understand that people are going to do what they're comfortable with. Their goals are not always in line with what the goals of the organization are. So you have to motivate people. You have to lead people. You have to be able to talk to people and show people. You have to gain their trust. You have to gain their respect. You do that with how you talk to people. You do that with your actions when you show up and you show somebody the right way to do something. You do that by not belittling somebody when they make a mistake. Allowing people to make mistakes that aren't serious mistakes so they learn. Because you're a hands-on learner, right? I'm a hands-on learner. I'm somebody who wants to go out and let me just tinker with it till I figure it out. But not everybody's like that. So you got to understand that about your people. How are you going to lead somebody who has more experience at UPS? Well, it's not so much something smarter back.
It's just some techniques they know that's better than what I know what to do.
Right. So is it important for you as a leader?
You gotta listen to what they gotta say.
To listen?
It's a better technique than you do.
Right.
Just gotta compromise.
Yeah. There's always compromise stuff in there. If it's accomplishing the overall goal of whatever you have to do as an organization, yeah. There's always that compromises in there. As long as it's moving towards the goal and it's in line with what you need to get done, then yes, there's a compromise. But how do you effectively communicate with somebody that doesn't want to do it the way it needs to be done? Think about it. You do it all the time. How do you get your parents to do something that you want done? Think about it. You have any brothers and sisters?
I got a sister.
All right. She older or younger? Older. All right. You ever had to have her do something that she didn't want to do? You ever asked her to do something she really didn't want to do?
Yeah.
I'm assuming like maybe drive you somewhere, drop you off somewhere. So how did you get her to do it?
Gas money.
Gas money.
Gas money always works.
All right.
Yeah, get some overtime.
Gas money. All right. You never just talk to her and say, hey, I really want to do this, and talk her into it without giving her gas money?
Yeah. Just tell her I really need to do it.
So you talked to her, right? You communicated with her, right? How did you communicate to her?
I told her I need to do something. She's like, all right. Most times she'll argue with me. If I need something, she'll help me do it.
She doesn't argue with you. That's nice.
Yeah, we're real close.
Well, that's good. How about your parents? You ever talk them into doing something like go stay at somebody's house when they really didn't want you to? Because they didn't want to. You just go.
No, I don't live. I always have people from my house. Never really know his house.
All right.
Unless it's my cousin.
So none of you guys ever talked to your parents and got them to do something they didn't want them to do?
Well, I mean, go to the dirt bike track.
Hey.
It took me forever.
You?
Yeah.
All
Mom, My mom does not like me driving her car.
All right.
So it took me like an hour to let me drive that car.
So what was the selling point?
Put gas in
Putting gas in the car.
You get some every time.
it and tell her I'm going to drive safely.
Drive safely. So what was in her mind, what were the things that you weren't going to do? Drive safely?
Yeah,
Wreck her car?
probably.
Drive it fast?
Yeah.
Wear the brakes out? Roll the windows down? Play the music too loud, right? Roll the windows down, play the music too loud, get yourself into trouble probably, right?
That's my truck.
That's your truck?
Yeah, my truck's too loud.
All right.
Sounds like Cody's is lying.
I think you're stupid.
So you talked to your mom into letting you borrow the car.
Yeah, to go pick him up.
So you play to all the things that she feared, right? You played to all the things she feared. You communicated it. I'll drive safe. I'll take care of your car. I won't drive fast. I'll have it home by this and such time.
Like an hour and a half.
Won't nobody be here in the car but me. I'll put gas into it. Right?
I put gas in it. I just was waiting.
So you mad.
But those are all the things that she worried about that you said you'll do, right? Because you knew what was important to her, right?
I had speed milk.
Last time I go home,
So you communicated, right? You had a communication style with your mom. Do you do that with your teacher?
Yeah, it depends on which teacher we're talking about.
Okay, let's take a teacher that you don't like.
Ooh, Miss Arnold.
How do you communicate with her?
I don't talk to her
You don't talk to her.
at all.
So is that a communication style?
Yeah, I guess.
What do you think everybody else in that room thinks? Your fellow students.
I don't know. She asked me a question, I just act like I can't hear her.
So if you have a boss that you don't like, you're just gonna act like you can't hear
Well,
him?
that's different.
How's it different?
The pay.
making money there. It's more
Because they
important.
can fire you from school, you don't, it's really hard to keep you in school. But jobs not.
But everything that you're doing right now is practice for the real world. Whether or not you realize it or not, you're building habits that are going to take you into the real world.
But they don't
When you
teach
go to
us
work.
the real things we need to know in school.
Like what?
A bunch of stuff.
Like communication skills?
Yeah, that too.
But you're doing that.
How to raise a kid, how to,
You don't need to
how
Okay.
to manage your money,
That's a
all that
self-learning
stuff.
experience.
Yeah.
Teach us the real stuff. They
But let me ask you a
know
question.
the Pythagorean theorem. When we ever use that again?
There's going to be a lot of times that you use things that you don't really think about. I didn't really use math until I got into policing later on down the road into investigations, and all I do is measurements and distance and understand trajectories and everything else. I hated geometry and algebra when I was in high school. Hated it. But I use stuff now that I never thought I would use to disprove what people are saying or to prove what people are saying. So the reality of it is the things that you're doing now are going to affect everything down the road. You're building habits. You're building things that you're going to do every single day and how you interact with future bosses, future co-workers, everything you do in school, whether you like somebody or dislike them, whether you have respect for them or you don't have respect for them. You are building your communication skills with either you approve of what they're doing or you disapprove of what they're doing. And that's what's going to carry you forward. And that's what you're going to relay to everybody that you meet and encounter in your life. You're building that right now. Because you're building your comfort zones. You're building the things that you know that you're going to fall back on when things get tough. When things aren't going your way, when you don't understand something, you're going to naturally go back to this time frame right here. Because you're building your foundation for who you are and how you're going to react. All your nonverbal cues, all your verbal cues, your body language, the words that you use, how you use those words. All that stuff is being built right now. How you interact with somebody that you don't like is how you're going to interact later on if you don't consciously think about that stuff. All that stuff is important, guys. You're going to run into people that you don't like in life, that you got to work with. You're going to run into people that you don't like that are your bosses, that you've got to do things and stay over. And guess what? I'm not going to get to go out and do my plans like I had planned for this weekend because I got to stay over and work this overtime. And you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be mad. And you got to come in early. You got to stay late. And you got to work on your day off. All those things are going to happen. It's how you react to that that dictates where you go, how you move forward, and what you view, how you communicate that to the world. How many days you wake up at 8 o'clock, you come into school, and it's like your nonverbal cues are, and I do this a lot with work. I walk in and I'm like, they're like, good morning. I'm like, yeah, it's one of those days. And that's what I say to people who work with me. What am I sending off in my signals, in my communication skills?
You're not in a good mood.
I'm not in a good mood. So which means what?
No one's gonna talk to you.
People are going to hesitate to talk to me. One of the biggest things that I had to learn as a leader, the most humbling, is not being expressive with my body language for displeasure. When you tell me something and I'm displeased with it, getting that look of, what the heck did you just tell me? Because you crush people from talking to you. It's important. It's important to know what you're sending off to people. Now you're all just all quiet. You know you lose most people in a conversation within the first 10 seconds. Ten seconds is all it takes. You're either going to listen to what I have to say or you're not going to listen to what I had to say. Some of you meet within the first 10 seconds, you've either tuned them out or you're going to pay attention to what they say. You think that's true?
Yeah.
You pretty much size everybody up with what they're saying within the first 10 seconds, right? So, first 10 seconds. How many of y'all tuned me out? You can be honest. Come on. You don't have to look over there to get your answer. Huh? Alright. What about you? You haven't said a whole lot, man. Kind of just sitting over there quiet. What's the most important thing that I said today?
Not be scared to answer people.
Not be what?
Answer people's questions.
Answer people's questions. It's pretty important. It's really important. What about you, man?
Be clear on how you communicate so people fully understand what you mean and try to tell them.
All right. What about you? I can't hear you, man.
Communicating is an important role in life.
Okay.
To always make things clear when you say it to somebody else. And if you want it done right, let them know that. Let them know everything that needs to be done.
About you?
Communication is important in jobs,
Yeah.
leadership.
Very true.
Communication skills throughout life, that's for sure.
Correct. Y'all have any questions about anything? You can ask anything. It doesn't have to be about communication. I'll leave it open to that. Because it all is all intertwined, so go ahead. Within reason, I'll answer it.
In the police,
Do what?
what are you?
I'm a lieutenant. I am a lieutenant in charge of investigations. So I have 5 property crimes detectives that work burglaries and felony thefts and car break-ins. And then I have 2 computer crimes guys that do nothing but computer forensics, cell phone forensics, stuff like that. And then I got 3 violent crimes detectives that do nothing but homicides, robberies, sexual assaults, and shootings, stabbings. And then I have a domestic violence detective that deals with domestic violence cases.
When's the last case you was on?
The last case I was on.
Was you on that one? On Skyline? That's all everybody was on Skyline.
Yep. Was out for that Friday night, and I was at work till midnight last night, interviewing some people on a different case. So I didn't get to go home and get a whole lot of sleep before I came in here. So, but I still had to be here at 8:30. Still had to be presentable in a suit, because that's the standard and expectation that we have for our detectives when they go do presentations outside of our department.
No, Detective Smith?
Brian Smith,
Huh?
Detective Brian Smith.
Yeah.
He's a violent crimes detective. He works in our section.
No, Bird Hammer.
Huh?
Bird Hammer.
Yeah, he works for the sheriff's department. I don't work with him much. I mean, I know who he is.
I just know who he is. I think he's a narcotics.
Yeah, I think that's what he does. So what other questions you got? I'm sure you're not just going to ask me about what position I hold in the department. You guys can ask anything you want. If I can answer it, I'll answer it. If I can't, I'll tell you I can't answer it.
You said you was on the SWAT team.
A long time ago. Do what?
Did you like it?
What's the worst case you've ever had to put up with?
The worst case
Yeah.
probably was like when I was very young as a patrol officer. Involved a little baby. You know, it was one of those things that you don't really want to run across when dealing with little kids, because they're very innocent in life. That's probably the hardest. Is dealing with little kids, that something happens to them. Unfortunately, we don't get to pick and choose. So.
You said you grew up in the military. Why do you want to be a cop instead of in the military?
Probably the only reason, I did a ride along when I was 20 years old, and I was in college, and like in the 8-hour shift, we ran like lights and sirens like all over the city of Hopkinsville, going to different like shots fired and large fights, and it was like my adrenaline kicked in, and it was the greatest thing ever. Like when I got done with my ride along, I had a headache because there was so much adrenaline pumping through my system, and I was like, this is really cool. You're doing something for the community that not a lot of people want to do, and it's enjoyable. I mean, this is fun. I'm really doing something. I'm going out there and dealing with people in their worst situations, and I'm removing something that's bad from their life or this environment. And that's how I looked at it. And after that, it's been ever since. And I'm very passionate about my work. Do I have frustrating days? because I have to deal with people in my department and co-workers and stuff, yeah. There's going to be frustrations and there's going to be disagreements because I think we should do it this way. My boss says I got to do it this way. It's life. I've got to do what I'm told to do. What else? Anybody else?
I'm about to hit his thumb.
Nobody? Good? All right. Yep, I'm done.
Thank you guys for coming in to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice meeting you
Done a
too,
great
man.
job.